Christina. Sorry it's been a while since I made one of these videos. If you follow my vlogs, you'll know that I just had surgery about a month ago, and I just haven't really been feeling up to filming much until today. Today, in honor of EDS Awareness Month, I wanted to have a rather important chat. I wanted to talk about the importance of diagnosis and early intervention. A lot of you, including myself, have probably heard from a doctor in regards to EDS, something along the lines of, what's the point of even going after a diagnosis? There's no cure for it. We'll just put you in physical therapy. That's the only treatment there is for it anyway. A few people have even told me that their doctor advised them against getting a diagnosis because it would make it harder for them to get insurance coverage later in life. Now, let me tell you how this mindset can be harmful. First of all, EDS is not the only condition that affects the connective tissue and causes hypermobility. If you or your doctor suspect that you might have EDS, you need to see an expert. You need to see a geneticist. The internet is a fantastic place to start. That is where I first found out about Ehlers Danlos myself. But self-diagnosing yourself over the internet is not enough. There are many other conditions and other connective tissue disorders that can mimic the symptoms of EDS, but each of these conditions comes with a very unique set of complications. So when being diagnosed, it is extremely important that these other possibilities are ruled out first. For instance, Marfan Syndrome. Marfan Syndrome is another connective tissue disorder that shares many of its symptoms and traits with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. But Marfan's patients have a different set of complications to look out for than most EDS patients do. For example, they are at a very increased risk of aortic rupture, which requires lifelong monitoring and lifestyle changes. Even within the EDS category, there are a growing number of types, such as vascular type, that could be pretty dangerous if left undiagnosed. Once again, these patients have to be carefully monitored and they have to make certain lifestyle changes to protect their health and well-being. For these patients especially, just shipping them off to the closest physical therapist who doesn't even really know about EDS could be a huge risk, and you don't want to take that chance. When it comes to these kind of things, you really need to know what you're up against so you can best care and advocate for yourself as a patient. An EDS patient needs to be treated very differently than your average person. Our bodies react differently to pretty much everything. For instance, our skin and tissue heals quite differently, and also our bodies tend to metabolize medications a little bit differently. Having an accurate, concrete diagnosis allows you to put together a protocol should you ever, and you probably will, need emergency medical attention, testing, surgeries, etc. And in some cases, these protocols can be the difference between life and death. Secondly, having a diagnosis can open doors in your treatment plan that you had no idea even existed. There is a lot of power in a diagnosis. Besides the classic joint and skin symptoms, EDS is a systemic condition, and it often causes a lot of secondary conditions as well. But our symptoms, especially at the beginning, can tend to be a bit vague and widespread, leaving doctors a little bit baffled. Chances are that if you are currently diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, you have been misdiagnosed with something else in the past. And a lot of us were told that it was all in our heads and it was simply a manifestation of our anxiety or depression. The trauma of growing up and the doctors not believing me and telling me it was all in my head, to this day, is probably still one of the worst things that this illness has put me through. So for me, and I know for a lot of you guys as well, having a diagnosis was very validating. In my personal experience, once I was diagnosed with EDS, we were finally able to start putting together all of those other pieces, and we were finally being referred to the proper specialists to help us to do so. Most EDS people will probably have to be followed by a multitude of different specialists for a multitude of different secondary conditions. And without that first diagnosis, sometimes it can be hard to get in to see these doctors, or to even know which doctors to see. And these secondary conditions, these can often be treated and managed. So yeah, we don't actually have a cure for EDS itself, but there are so many treatment options out there that are available to you besides physical therapy that can really greatly improve your quality of life. So don't let anybody tell you that just because we don't have a cure yet, that there is no hope. Also, if you are currently in schooling, having a diagnosis can be a big aid to you. There are a number of accommodations, at least here in the US, that you are legally entitled to as a disabled student. And yeah, I do know that sometimes we like to avoid that label, but it's the truth. EDS is a disability. So going from there, let's talk about the insurance part. Or let's not talk about the insurance part. Because of some of the current changes and political agendas going on, I do want to talk about this subject. But I think I want to save this specific topic for a whole nother video. Plus, I currently don't feel like I'm well informed enough to be making any comments on it at this point, but I can talk about disability insurance. Now, this is going to be pretty different for every patient for multiple reasons. When it comes down to it, a lot of us are unable to work because of our physical condition, or at least unable to work full-time. So whether you have worked in the past or not, many of us find that we have to apply for disability. Like I said, this is going to vary quite a bit from circumstance to circumstance, and I only know how this works in the US. But when you are applying for disability, they are going to ask for all of your doctors, all of your diagnoses, your medications, your surgeries, etc. And they will check up on these. Having accurate, concrete diagnoses in this case is going to be crucial. Having a name for your symptoms obviously doesn't change how disabling they are to you, but on paper, like I said, diagnosis is power. Because I had a solid EDS diagnosis with the geneticist to back it up, and solid diagnoses for all of my secondary conditions with a specialist to back each of those up, I was accepted on the very first go. I was even provided with secondary insurance from the state that picks up some of the costs that my primary insurance does not. And these are costs like medication costs and doctor's copays, so it really does make a huge difference. And I do get a monthly disability check that, although is not enough to live on, it really does help to lighten the financial burden that this condition has put on me and my family. I do consider myself quite lucky in comparison to many to have been diagnosed in my mid-teens, although I dearly, dearly wish that I had been diagnosed earlier on. I just often wonder how things would be different if I knew then what I know now. I certainly would not have been in competitive gymnastics, I can tell you that for sure. And looking back, I'm sure a lot of us have those regrets. We had no idea what these years of everyday wear and tear were going to do to our bodies. Maybe if I had been diagnosed younger, I could have avoided a lot of this spinal instability and injury that I acquired over the years. I just had no idea what damage I was doing to my body until it was too late. So don't wait and don't take chances, and definitely do not take chances with your children. Even if you suspect maybe a friend's child has EDS, I really encourage you to speak up. Nobody wants to be that person who tells their friend that their kid might be sick, but hey, maybe just a little heads up could make a huge difference in the future. Now, this is just a disclaimer when it comes to children. Children are born very flexible and hypermobile. So definitely don't start to get freaked out if your baby can put their feet behind their head. That is totally normal. But especially if there's a family history of EDS, I would just keep your eye on it and keep a lookout for any other red flag symptoms. I cannot stress this enough. Early intervention is key to a healthy and happy life with EDS. An Ehlers Danlos patient requires a lifetime of physical therapy and muscle strengthening to help to protect their joints. And a lot of doctors recommend that hypermobile patients stay away from contact or repetitive sports and activities to avoid injuries that could be permanent. Dietary changes can be made to accommodate different food allergies and sensitivities. All of these small lifestyle changes can make a huge difference in the life of an EDS patient. And the earlier it's introduced, the better. less damage and injuries are accumulated. Because for us, a lot of times once there's a traumatic injury, it never really heals. So if we can prevent that from the beginning, that is ideal. Plus, when it comes to children, having a connective tissue disorder diagnosis can potentially save the family from the nightmare of having to deal with child protective services. Because of how easily we bruise, dislocate, and break bones in even the most minor of circumstances, sometimes a teacher or a doctor or a friend might start to get a little bit suspicious and file a report with Child Protective Services. In some rare cases even, a child as young as a few weeks old is taken away from the home due to unexplained injuries. In cases like this, obviously an EDS diagnosis or a connective tissue disorder diagnosis would be extremely beneficial. And in most cases, we would hope it would allow you to avoid that situation altogether. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, it's too late for me, the damage has been done, what's even the point of getting diagnosed? I think it is never too late. At very, very least, it provides you with some answers and hopefully some validation for some of the things that you've been struggling with your whole life. But also, because of the genetic component of Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, your diagnosis could potentially save a family member or multiple family members from suffering the same fate. I have seen it happen. Oftentimes, a single diagnosis can set off a chain reaction within a family where multiple people are being diagnosed and treated. Alright guys, that is all I have to say on the subject for today. I'm sorry I'm getting this video up so late in the month. I had every intention of recording it earlier in the month, but obviously things just got a little bit complicated. But it is here now. So happy Ehlers Danlos Awareness Month to all of you. There are still a few days left to enter my big EDS Essential giveaway for the end of the month. If you're interested in learning more about how to enter that, I will link that video above and below. As always, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time. Bye!